Welcome to Pocket Pals, and today we will talk about your GED RLA, and this will be consider this as your study guide or your ultimate GED RLA crash course. So, everything that you need to know about GED RLA, we will talk about today. So, let's start. What do you need to know about the GED Language Arts Test? First, you should be familiar with reading and writing concepts along with grammar. Of course, that is given. However, the Language Arts Test is not a memorization test. You don't need to memorize giant vocabulary words or diagram sentences. It's not like that. Unlike for other GED subjects, like your sciences and math and even social studies, where you have to memorize some facts or some information. You also need to read and understand test passages, literary or fictional and informational excerpts. You need to demonstrate that you can write clearly and draw conclusions, which is using your critical thinking skills in reading and writing. The test also covers grammar, okay? So this crash course, I will try to give all the concepts that you will need to read about and study and prepare before you can take your GED RLA exam. Okay? Now, it doesn't mean that you need to know everything in this guide. All right. Yes, you might know it, but that's not everything. You need to keep on practicing. Okay? So, having practice tests is a great way to help you determine if you're ready. Now, let's take a look at the test. Now, for topics, you have to work on reading for meaning, identifying and creating arguments. I'll talk about all of these later. Grammar and language. I'll be more specific later. Now, how about the time to take the test? It's a total of 150 minutes, 10-minute break between parts 2 and part 3. So you will do part 1 and part 2 simultaneously, and then after that you'll have a 10-minute break. And the part 2 or the essay part is 45 minutes. How about the format? Like what I mentioned earlier, 3 sections, 1 written essay. Now for the others, it's multiple choice and other question types like drag and drop, usually for diagrams and flowcharts, hotspot, and drop down. Okay? So, what you'll be tested on? Okay, so the GED test will measure your strength in these skills, the topics that I mentioned a while back: reading for meaning, identifying, creating arguments, grammar and language. Let's start with the topics under reading for meaning. So, first thing is you need to know events, plots, characters, settings, and ideas. So what kind of questions are asked here? You will be asked to put events in order, make inferences or draw conclusion about plots, sequence of events, characters, settings, and ideas and passages. You will also analyze relationship within passages, including how people, events, and ideas are connected. Right? So, so you should be familiar about all of these parts of a written passage. You need to understand the characters, you need to understand the environment, uh, the events that happened, all right, and all of these important concepts in reading. So, like an example question would be like, which three words describe Anne's character? And then you will be given a multiple choice question like dramatic, enthusiastic, disappointed. You will have to read the passage in order to know the character of Anna, or Anne, I mean. You also need to understand main ideas and details. So, in order to do that, determine the relationship between ideas and analyze how details develop the main idea. All right. So, if you're given a passage, you might be given a question like, what role does this sentence play in the sentence? And then you will have some options like, it shows details about blah blah blah, and so on, right? You also need to know the point of view and the purpose of the author. So you will be asked to identify the author's point of view, like first person, second person, third person, objective, limited, and omniscient. And what is the author's purpose? You will determine how the author explains a position and respond to different viewpoints. And you will infer the author's purpose in the passage when it is not stated. Okay? So, for example, a question like, what is the primary purpose of this document? You will have those kind of questions. And you need to know tone and figurative language. So the tone is when you're singing, that's gonna be your voice, like how well you play with the notes. Now, in the case of language arts or GED RLA, the tone is how the writer plays with his words. What kind of words is he using to develop a character of a certain line? Okay, so you will be asked to understand the words and how it affects tone, understand figurative language like hyperbole, simile, metaphor, and all of those figurative language, and how it affects the meaning of words or phrases. You will need to understand how the use of words, phrases, or figurative language influence the author's purpose. So you will need to understand rhetorical techniques or words and figurative language to convey different meanings, emotions, and persuade readers. Okay, so there are many ways for words to impact tone and convey the author purpose. Like common techniques will be like imagery, analogy, repetition, and like what I said a while back, like simile and metaphor, right? So you need to read on those. Also, you would need to organize ideas. So you will be asked to determine how a section fits into a passage and help develop the ideas. So for example, like which sentence should be removed on paragraph A, all right? Or analyze how the text is organized, like what is the organizational structure, like spatial, chronological order, and all of those other concepts on organizational structure. Understand the meaning and purpose of transition words, so you need to know that as well, and you can use them as clues, and analyze how organization of a paragraph or passage supports the author's ideas. And lastly, under this concept on reading for meaning, you would be asked to compare different ways of presenting ideas. That includes like you need to evaluate different texts, two different texts, and how they address scope, purpose, emphasis, and the audience and the impact. And when you're evaluating two different passages, you will be asked to check on the point of view, the tone, style, and compare them. All right, so sometimes you will be given two passages, and then there will be a multiple choice question like, how is passage 1 and passage 2 different from each other? Something like that. Now, the second concept that you will be tested about is identifying and creating arguments. Usually this is for the essay part. Now we have, I think, 4 concepts under this topic. So the first one is, you will be asked to check the relationship of evidence to main ideas and details. So that includes you summarizing information from a passage, identifying the relationship between the main idea and details of a passage, determining the main idea of a passage, determining which details support a main idea, identifying the theme and supportive elements in fiction and nonfiction. All right. So it's not only on the essay part. Sometimes you will be asked questions on section 1 and section 2, like multiple choice question. What approach did this character take to encourage this concept? So you will be asked those questions. Another one is you need to draw conclusion. You should make inference, and you should evaluate evidence. So you will be asked to interpret passages, evaluate the evidence, then make inferences and draw conclusions. So this section is primarily focused on using logic and reasoning to interpret a reading. Like, you need to make generalizations based on evidence, use main ideas to draw conclusion, describe the steps of an argument, identify evidence used to support a claim or conclusion, determine whether evidence is relevant and sufficient, determine whether a statement is or is not supported. You need to assess whether an argument is valid. You need to identify assumptions in an argument and determine if they are supported by the evidence. And you need to analyze two arguments and evaluate the types of evidence used to support each claim. So primarily, this is on the second part or section of the GED RLA test. Now, there will be some data, graphs, or pictures as evidence, and you will need to interpret them or analyze them. Since, sometimes you will be given informational text, and usually from primary sources, so you will need to interpret tables and graphs. This is also present on your social studies test, not only on the GED RLA test. And lastly, under this concept, you need to extend your understanding to new situations. So you will be asked to combine information from different sources, draw conclusion, and transfer information to new situations. Okay, so there. Now, as for grammar and language, since you will be tested here, first, you will be tested on your word usage. How well you use your vocabulary, okay? You will be asked to sometimes correct errors with frequently confused words, so spelling, right? You would need to correct subject-verb agreement. So you need to read on subject-verb agreement. You would need to correct pronoun errors, like you should study pronoun agreement or pronoun antecedent rules. you would need to eliminate non-standard English, like like personal vocabularies. So you need to use more formal vocabularies and avoid colloquial terms or slang words. So, like for example, confusing words like two and two, like TOO, TWO, and TO, right? And new, and EW, and K and EW, right? Yeah, and like non-standard English words like kinda, all right. Or some sentences will say, "How is your food tasting?" So that is an informal way of saying it. How does your food taste? Right. That's a more formal tone. Now you will also be checked on how you understand sentence structure. Like you will need to eliminate dangling and misplaced modifiers. Okay, that is one concept that GED RLA is so favorite. They love it. I mean, they love asking questions about it. I'm sorry about that. So, yeah, dangling or misplaced modifiers, that's a topic you should read about. Parallel structure as well. Your use of conjunction. So, parallel structure is when you are mentioning a list or writing about a list, and it should be in uniform when it comes to structure, verb tense. You will also be asked about, pronoun antecedent, awkward sentence structures, run-on sentences, and sentence fragments. You need to write incomplete sentences or check on the questions if they are in fragments or not. And you will also be checked on your knowledge on transition words. So you will be asked to use them, to suggest what transition word is necessary. Like however, although, and in conclusion, all of those are transition words. And lastly, of course, is the basic grammar concepts like capitalization, punctuation, and apostrophes. Okay, so please try to read these. Apostrophe is a common concept always surfacing on your GED RLA, so please focus on that. So that's it. This is your GED RLA. All right, just try to read all the concepts that I mentioned today and consider this as your study guide. I hope that I was able to help you today, and I want to thank you for staying here and watching the whole video. Thank you so much for your time, and I'll see you in our next video. Again, this is Teacher Marco, and goodbye.